Now, let's see the origin of these tenets. So these tenets were not given by Philipson, okay? These tenets were given by the so-called Makerere report. Makerere. Do you know Makerere? Yes. You know, Makerere was the first university, okay, in East Africa. You got a concept? By then, even the University of Dar es Salaam was not there, okay? Different Tanzanians were going to Makerere. Where is Makerere? Uganda. So, in 1961, there was a report which was called Makerere Report. Makerere Report, 1961. And this report had a policy, okay? This Makerere Report had a policy, which is English-only policy. English-only policy. The Makerere Report was a report which was meant to support English in former British colonies. And this report had a policy. And this policy was English-only policy. English-only policy. What do you mean by English-only policy? Actually, the English-only policy, as we are going to see later, the English-only policy, as we're going to see later, was meant to support English as the only Western language, as the only dominant language to be used as a medium of instruction in former British colonies. Like I said last time, in former British colonies, we have different languages, okay? We have different languages. For example, when you talk about Tanzania, we have Swahili as our national language. Apart from Swahili, we also have our ethnic community languages, okay? Languages that pertain to ethnic groups, okay? Now, the English-only policy, which was included in the Makerere Report in 1961, was meant to support English as a language which was supposed to be used as a medium of what? Instruction in former British colonies. Now, in order for English to be supported as a medium, as the only medium of instruction, okay, in the former British colonies, some arguments were to be put forward, and these arguments are the so-called tenets. So the Makerere Report came with a number of tenets which were meant to support English as the only language to be used as a medium of what? Instruction. Okay? Even though other local languages were given a chance to be used in the curriculum, the priority was given to what? Was given to what? To English. Now, what's the first tenet? What's the first tenet to support English? The first tenet is that English is better taught monolingually. English is better taught monolingually. That's the first tenet. English is better taught monolingually. Let me explain this, okay? English is better taught monolingually. You know what I mean by monolingual? Monolingual aspects. When you say English is better taught monolingually, we mean that where English is used as a medium of instruction, or where English is taught, other languages should be discouraged. You get a concept? That's the meaning of this tenet. English is better taught monolingually. That means where English is taught, where English is used as a medium of instruction, other languages must be discouraged. Other languages must be excluded from the educational context. You get a concept? That's what is meant by English is better taught monolingually. For example, when I was in secondary school, this tenet was so much enhanced because students were not allowed to use their ethnic community languages or Swahili in the school environment, especially when they are out of the classroom, where Swahili was taught as a subject, okay? When you are out of the classroom, or where you don't meet Swahili as a subject, you were supposed to use English throughout. You get the concept? So this notion can be given as an example of how this tenet works. English is better taught monolingually. This means in order for English to flourish, in order for English to be well taught, other languages should be discouraged. Other languages should be excluded from the educational environment. So only English should be taught. You get the concept? That's why by then, when I was in secondary school, we had different campaigns to discourage students from speaking the so-called vernacular languages. Vernacular languages, because our languages were called vernacular languages, barbaric languages. So our languages were not supposed to be mingled. We're not supposed to be mingled with English, because mingling our languages with the English could let me use this word, could contaminate, could it? Contaminate English. So in order for English, just listen, in order for English to remain pure, other languages had to be excluded from the educational environment, from the educational context. You get this tenet now? You know what I mean by this tenet? You understand the meaning of this tenet now? Okay, another tenet. The ideal, okay? The ideal of English teachers as a native speaker. The ideal of English teachers as a native speaker. As a native speaker. The ideal, okay, from idea, ideal, okay? The ideal of English teachers as a native speaker. You know what I mean by this? What I mean by this is that English had to be taught by teachers who were speaking English as native speakers. English had to be taught by teachers who were speaking English as native speakers. But as you're going to see later, this is a fallacy. Because what matters here is the knowledge of the language. You don't have to be a good teacher because you are speaking like a native speaker, okay? Okay? If you are qualified as a teacher, it means that you are competent, okay? You know the rules of that language, okay? And if you know the rules, and when we talk about the rules, we can include different aspects, okay? Grammatical aspects, okay? If you know the phonology, okay? The phonetics, the syntax, the morphology, you know how to form words in that language. You know how to teach tense, okay? Then you can be a good teacher, okay? So you don't have to depend on native speakers to teach English, okay? So because of this tenet, the British decided to deploy different British experts, okay, who were sent to third world countries to teach what? To teach English, because they did not trust the local teachers. They thought that local teachers could not teach English well, because they were not native speakers. But linguistically speaking, any person who has the knowledge of that language can teach any language, okay? So a Tanzanian teacher can teach Chinese. A Tanzanian teacher can teach French. A Tanzanian teacher can teach Russian, okay? What we need here are language competencies, okay? Language skills. Does this teacher possess the required language skills to teach that language, okay? If this this teacher possesses the required skills, then they can teach what? They can teach a certain language. So we don't simply depend on native speakers to teach a language. That's why nowadays we have teachers in Tanzanians who are teaching Chinese, okay? I teach French. Am I French? Am I a native speaker of French? But I teach French because I'm a qualified French teacher, so I can teach French. Okay? So this is a fallacy, as you want to see later. Another tenet. The earlier the English is taught, the English is taught, the better the results. The earlier the English is taught, the better the results. The earlier the English is taught, the better the results. You know this? Have you written that? The earlier the English is taught, the better the results. What do we mean by this? This tenet simply means that we need to teach English, and the earlier the English is taught, the better the results. I think they were focused on the so-called critical age hypothesis. Critical age? Do you remember that? Do you remember the critical age hypothesis? What does it mean? Critical age hypothesis. Do you know what we mean by plasticity? Plasticity. Brain plasticity? Brain? Brain plasticity. Do you know that? Brain? Because brain plasticity goes hand in hand with the critical age hypothesis. First of all, do you know what we mean by the critical age hypothesis? What is it? Can you explain that? Critical age hypothesis. What's it?
I don't know how I coin it, but it's all about the age that a child.
Mm-hmm. Because because by the critical age hypothesis, they suggest that a person needs to learn a new language, a new language when they are still young, because when they are grown-ups, their brain cannot accommodate new languages. And if they can't accommodate new languages, then when an adult learns a language, this language cannot be naturally spoken because this is an adult. So they tried to compare an adult learning a second language and a child learning a second language. And they came up with the conclusion that when a child learns a new language, understanding this language and becoming natural is easy. But when an adult learns a new language, becoming natural is difficult because this adult has reached the so-called critical age hypothesis. So his brain cannot cope with the learning of a new language. That's why you find that when you relocate to the United States today with your child is going to speak American English more naturally than you. You'll be speaking American English with a Tanzanian accent because you went to the United States when you were already an adult. But this also was questioned. The critical age hypothesis was questioned because they said individuals are different. Individuals are different. While there are adults who cannot learn or acquire a second language well, there are other adults who can acquire a second language well. So we should not generalize. So as you're going to see later, even this one also is a fallacy. So they say in order for children to acquire and learn English well, they need to be taught English right from the beginning, okay? You know what is this meant to do? This was meant to deprive children of their languages. Because if you say children have to be taught English right from the beginning,